Hi, thanks for joining. We're going to wait a few more minutes to see if a few more people pop on. I'm Georgia, and today you are going to learn the basics of some jewelry assembly as well as wire wrapping stones. Okay. All right, there's enough people on here. Let's get started. Okay, so no matter what type of jewelry assembly you're doing, you're going to need some pliers. So let's go over our pliers. Now, these are going to be different from the pliers that you see in your house. These are smaller in size and they are flat because you don't want to leave any kind of marks or ridges on your finished work because then you'll just have to polish it afterwards. So what we're going to use are flathead pliers. And then we have here they are, round nose pliers. We have our wire cutters. And I actually like to keep on hand some different variations of flathead pliers. So I have, as you can see, different widths and also certain ones that are pointed on the end. So that way you can really get in on a close, tight squeeze at the end of your wire wrapping. So some other basic things that we are going to use are chain. I have a pretty stone that we're going to wrap. This is fluorite. And then we're also going to wrap in a different style, Herkimer diamond crystal quartz. And also I'm going to pick these up with the tweezers so we can get, with the pliers, we can get nice and close to the camera. This little ring is called a jump ring. So I'll show you later how to properly open and close a jump ring as well. So the first style of wire wrapping that we are going to do is going to be for something like this, where you see the wire is actually going all the way through and has an opening, a little loop on both sides. So this way you can hook it up straight to the chain, or you can intertwine them into other stones like I did on that necklace. Okay, so let's get started. We are going to do the fluorite stone, and I'm going to grab my needle nose pliers, the round ones, okay? A piece of wire, which is actually a supply I forgot to mention before. So with wire, you can get different gauges, which is just how thick it is. This one's super thin. This is a 30 gauge wire. And then you can also get thicker gauges, which are like this one. So you're going to want to choose a wire that obviously fits through the hole of your stone, but you're not jamming it in there. You want there to be some wiggle room so you don't crack the stone while you're wrapping it. And you don't want it to be too light of a weight of a wire because then even with just easy wear, the movement of the necklace could actually snap the wire. So I can't tell you an exact wire gauge to use because stones can be drilled at different sizes. So you just have to try and, I usually get a few different wire gauges and then, I have them around so I have enough to kind of mess around with. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, before I even touch the stone, I'm going to take my wire. I'm going to put it right in between the pliers. Now here, let me see if I can, there you go. I'm going to hold it against my hand so you can see it a little bit better. So there's not like a predetermined amount of wire that you should be using. For the case of this video, so that you can see everything easily, I'm using a little bit more than I would normally use. So what I'm going to do is I'm towards the top end of the wire. I'm going to take the little piece and I'm going to roll it around. Okay, so now both of these pieces are facing down. Next, I'm going to take my flat heads and I'm going to take the little piece, and I'm just going to wind it around the larger wire. I like to do it 2 or 3 times. So I'm doing that right now. I'm going to show you a nice close-up. Okay, so now what I'm left with is a little loop on top. Okay? So I'm gonna take my little cutters, or my snippies as I call them. I'm gonna cut off that little tiny tail that is from wrapping around the wire. Okay, and I'm gonna take my flat heads again, and I am just going to squeeze it just a smidge so it's tighter. So some people like to use a dot of glue on top of their wire wrapping just to have some extra security. If you're wrapping it tightly, you don't need glue. I am against glue on any jewelry. If you are going to use a glue because you're starting out and you just are feeling like it might unravel, what you should do is use one that is not water-based, because you don't want the glue to start to dissolve when someone might be perspiring or caught in the rain. But if you're wrapping it tightly enough, and if you're using the correct gauge metal, you don't have to worry about that wire moving. Another little technique that you can do is, now that we're going to put it through the stone, okay, I'm going to pull it all the way through. Another little technique that you can do is take that tiny little bit of metal that might be shooting out still if you didn't press it down with your pliers, and you can take it and try and push it in the hole. So now there's no chance of it unwrapping because the end of the wire is now inside of the stone. So this is what we have right now. We have the stone, as you can see, with the one loop already done, okay? So now we're gonna do the other side. And this is why I chose a slightly longer piece of wire for a smaller stone, because you want to be able to again make a loop on the other side and wrap it around itself again. So we're gonna bring back those round nose pliers. Okay. Now you can gauge it. Take a look at the other loop that you just did if you're doing this, or take a look at the loop that I just did. Now it's a small amount of space for the wire to wrap around. So I'm not gonna start all the way up here when I'm pinching it, because then there's gonna be all this floppy extra wire just hanging out around there. So I'm gonna gauge it, and I'm gonna start much closer to the stone, right about there, because that looks like it's about the same measurement on the other side to allow for looping. If you really want to be precise, you can measure it. Just whip out a ruler, or I'm at a loss of words, one of these things, and you can measure it out and get it perfect. If you took a look at my website before all of this, I'm not for perfection unless it's like a piece of bridal jewelry or something like that. When you're using natural stones, sometimes it's nice to have some stuff either, looking a little bit more raw and natural. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to take the longer piece of wire and wrap it. Okay, and feel free to adjust. And I'm gonna wrap it around again. 1, 2, 3. Now it's wrapped around, okay? So now I have the stone with the loop on either side and this chunk of wire hanging off. Okay, so I'm gonna take my cutters and we are going to cut the majority of that off, super close, as close as you possibly can. If you're gonna pinch it with the flatheads afterwards, as close as you possibly can. If you're going to tuck it into the stone, give yourself a little bit of length and then tuck it right into the hole that you originally passed the wire through. So here we go. All right, now I'm gonna hold it with these. And the wire should be soft enough where you can mess around with it. Like if you feel like one of your loops is leaning a little bit towards the bottom and the other is leaning towards the top, it's still flexible, because remember, you have to use a wire that is not stuck in there. You want your necklaces to have a little bit, or earrings, whatever you're making, you want them to have a little bit of movement to them so that the tension doesn't end up splitting your stone. So if you feel like your loops are a little off-centered, like you could see one of mine looks like it's going like vertical, the other one's horizontal. So I'm just gonna hold on to one of them, and I'm gonna take my pliers and just shift the other one up. Okay, so now we have a wire wrapped stone this way. Now what you would do is, we're gonna assemble at the end. You can continue and you can wire wrap them into each other, or you can just use the jump ring and attach it straight to the chain or to another stone. Okay, so that was the first